welcome to you, my treasured viewers and listeners, my treasured students. I want to welcome you back to our favorite channel, Alfonso the Rothschild Tutorials. On our immediate past video, we made our introduction to the simple past tenses, analyzing various aspects of that tense, and I did advertise that in this particular video that we will still be examining the past tenses, the simple past tenses, but this time we shall be talking about contractions in the simple past tense involving negative and interrogative sentences. And to begin with, I have listed a number of verbs below the topic of our discussion today. If you watched our videos on the simple present tenses, you would discover that on those videos, I also talked about contractions, and I told us that in English grammar, there is a category of verbs that are involved in contractions, or a category of verbs that we have in mind when we talk about contractions. And these verbs are known as auxiliary verbs. There are two classes of auxiliary verbs. The first class is known as the primary auxiliary verbs, while the second class is referred to as the modal auxiliary verbs. Whether primary or modal, the auxiliary verbs alone, among all the verbs in English language, are able to contract, are able to form their own negatives, are able to form their own question or interrogative forms. The auxiliary verbs are as distinct from the lexical or main verbs. So when we divide verbs in English language into two broad categories, we will be talking about the auxiliary verbs and the non-auxiliary verbs. The non-auxiliary verbs are the ones that are referred to as the main verbs or the lexical verbs. In English language, the lexical verbs often express their own actions. They express an action. They are the main action verbs in English language. But these lexical verbs are incapable of contractions. That means they can't have the word not added to them to change the affirmative or positive sentence to a negative one. So, for instance, in the sentence, I detest smoking. In the sentence, I detest smoking. The verb is detest, and it is a lexical verb. You can also call it a main verb because it is non-auxiliary. But this verb is not capable of making a negative. When I talk about a negative, I mean adding the word not to a verb so that it will negate or deny what it has said. For instance, in the sentence, she can jump. It is very easy to negate this sentence by adding not, the word not to can. So the first sentence, she can jump, is affirmative or positive. The second one is negative. That is, in this sentence, we have negated We have negated the verb can. That we've made it the opposite of what it says. It says she can jump. The opposite is she cannot jump. But we can't do the same with detest. We can't say, I detest not smoking. No, it is not done that way in English grammar. We cannot add not to a lexical verb. So we can say, I detest not. So, for a lexical verb to make its own negative, it will need an auxiliary. It will require an auxiliary verb to go with it. But the auxiliary verb itself can make its own negative without requiring any assistance. The auxiliary verb is an assisting verb, a helper verb. It provides help to the lexical verbs to help them be able to make a negation or be able to ask a question. So, she can jump can become, can she jump? But I detest smoking cannot become detest I smoking. No. Lexical verbs do not make their own interrogative that way. Only modal verbs, that is modal auxiliary verbs and primary auxiliary verbs, are able to do so. So for a lexical verb like detest, to make a negative, it will need an auxiliary. For instance, one auxiliary that detest can use is do. Both do and does are auxiliary. So, to make a negation of I detest smoking, I'll have to say I do not. I'll put not before do because it's an auxiliary verb. I'll put not before do before I add the lexical verb detest. So I can now get I do not detest smoking, which is a negative. And so, my esteemed viewers, this is what we're talking about today. This is what we want to be talking about in our class today. So these verbs I've listed here in brackets are the auxiliary verbs that we need today. They are all past tenses. We have not included their present forms because their present forms will be discussed in the present tense. Some of them had already been spoken about in connection with contractions and negatives and interrogatives on our video in the present tenses. So let us go on at once. Let us first of all have an example of a sentence that doesn't involve a contraction. That sentence is affirmative. Let us make an affirmative sentence. So if we have a sentence which says, the sentence here says, Melek was at the pool. Melek was at the pool. Melek was at the pool. This is an affirmative sentence. Affirmative. Affirmative. An English grammar word that means true. That means yes. A sentence that can be interpreted, to mean true or yes is affirmative. That means it is a statement of fact. So we say it is an affirmative sentence, or you can say it is positive, a positive sentence. Good. So in our example, Melek was at the pool is affirmative. It is a statement of fact. It is simple past tense. A sentence which denies what is said here is negative. That is opposite of it. And how do auxiliary verbs, or how does an auxiliary verb make it negative? Simply by adding the word not. to the affirmative verb. Now the affirmative form is was. The negative form is was not. So we can say he for the noun Melek. He was not at the pool. He was not at the pool. Then when we contraction, a contraction is the short form of a negative verb. That is this verb that expresses a negative. The short form of it is the contraction. And the short form would be Melek wasn't at the pool. Melek wasn't at the pool. If you watched our video on contraction in the present tenses, you would notice that I spoke about contractions, how to write contractions correctly and how to pronounce them correctly. The final T sound in a contracted verb is a silent letter. So it is incorrect to pronounce this word as wasn't, no. The pronunciation ends or terminates with the letter N, the sound produced by the letter N. So we say wasn't, but not wasn't. Good. And usually the spelling has to be correct when you're writing. The contraction, in a contraction, the apostrophe comes after the N and the final T follows. It doesn't come before the N or after the final T. So we say Melek wasn't at the pool. Let us take a similar example. We say, for instance, we were at the art salon. We were at the art salon. Or we were not, short form, wearing. We weren't at the art salon. A salon is a gathering of artists. A salon is a gathering of experts or practitioners in any field of art, fine art, music, writing, or fiction, and so on and so forth. A salon is a gathering of artists to discuss matters of interest to them. Compare the word saloon. A saloon car, for instance, an adjective used to say that the car is comfortable, a posh car. Hope you are making a sense here. So now let us carry on. Let's take our sentence 6. Says, we weren't or we were not at the art salon. 6. It says, Sonny had no cash on him. Sonny had no cash on him is another way of saying he hadn't. He hadn't any cash. Or he hadn't cash on him. He hadn't, but not hadn't. He hadn't any cash on him. So that is a negative. 8. He says, Bob could fly the airplane. Bob could fly the airplane. Bob could fly the airplane, or Bob could not. Bob could not becomes Bob couldn't. In bracket, couldn't. Bob couldn't fly the Bob couldn't fly the airplane. Now let's take one more example using should. You should not, or we say you shouldn't, but not shouldn't, not couldn't. Couldn't, shouldn't. You should not, or you shouldn't say that for the instructor. You couldn't say that to the instructor. You couldn't say that to the instructor. Let us take down the verb ought to. It says, for instance, busy at to have. Busy ought to have asked Pam before riding her bicycle. Busy ought to have asked. The auxiliary verb ought to have asked, ought to, is a synonym of should. To say should means it is the right thing. To say ought to is to say is the right thing. We ought to wake up early in the morning and do our chores means we should wake up in the morning and do our chores. They are both standard English words, but should is more common and ought to more formal, and so not so common. Let us take Number 12. BC ought not to have. That is the negative. Ought not to have. BC ought to have. BC ought not to have. Now, ought not to have is contracted as oughtn't. Ought not to have is contracted as oughtn't to have. BC ought not to have asked Pamela before riding her bicycle. BC ought not to have asked Pamela before riding her bicycle. Let us take another sentence. This time, 13. It says the truck might have hit the hawker. Might have hit. So we can now have the truck might not have, might not have hit. The short form or contraction of might not is mightn't. Mightn't. The truck mightn't have hit the hawker, or the truck might have hit the hawker. The truck might not have hit the hawker. The truck mightn't have hit the hawker. Sentence 14 says, Carol must wear her party dress tonight. Now I must remark at this juncture that the auxiliary verbs must and ought to have no present tense. They are used only in the past and again in the present. So they can be said to be both present and past, because must is used to talk about that which is imperative, something that has to be done. And ought is used to say that something or a situation is right or not right. So must in the negative becomes must not. Carol must not wear her party dress tonight. Must not wear her party dress tonight. All right. That is all that we can take today on our class on contractions in the simple past tense using negative and interrogative sentences. So that's all we can take on the aspect of it that has to do with contractions. At the moment, we want to shift our gaze to the interrogative sentence. We've already seen the behavior of sentences and the behavior of auxiliary verbs when they are contracted and when they are negative. Now, interrogation means question, the question form. I'd like to give you our sentence here. Let us use the auxiliary verb need. You say the affirmative, you need go there as soon as possible. This sentence can also have the preposition to. When we have the preposition to, then the go here becomes to go, and it is called a to infinitive. When we use it also correctly without the to, it becomes a bare infinitive. So we can say you need to go as soon as possible, or you need go as soon as possible. Then the negative becomes you need not go as soon as possible, while the interrogative, the question form, becomes need you to go, or need you go as soon as possible. But there is an alternative, because the verb need is both an auxiliary verb and a lexical verb, just like the verb have is both auxiliary and lexical. So the third sentence I have here uses need in its function as a lexical verb. But when it is used as an auxiliary verb, that is, in this example, I beg your pardon, we have used it as an auxiliary verb, so it is used on its own to ask a question. But when it is used as a lexical verb, then it requires an auxiliary. Then you need you go as soon as possible becomes do you, so it will go with an auxiliary. Do you need to go as soon as possible? Do you need to go as soon as possible? Okay. Then number 2, we say Anna does the auxiliary verb there. Anna does to challenge the mistress. Anna dares to challenge the mistress, meaning she has the courage to challenge the mistress. However, when we use this verb there in the negative. The S, the final S that it has here, disappears. So we don't say Anna does not. No, instead of saying Anna does not, we say Anna dare not. Anna dare not challenge. Dare not challenge the mistress. Now, dare not challenge. Dare not becomes daring. So we can say she daring. This is a contraction. She daring challenge the mistress. She daring challenge the mistress. Good. Then the question form, the interrogative becomes does she challenge the mistress? Question form. Does she challenge the mistress? There is one last example of an auxiliary verb that we need to discuss before we close our lesson for today. And that auxiliary verb is used to. It's a special verb because it is only used in the past tense. It is never present. It doesn't have a singular or plural form. So all the subjects can use it. Just like they. Now I like to point out that much like need, they also doubles as an auxiliary verb and also as a lexical verb. So the question does she challenge the mistress can also be written as does she dare? In this example, does she dare? It is a lexical verb, so it requires the auxiliary does. Does she dare to challenge the mistress? Does she dare to challenge the mistress? Then finally we take used to. I used to. We used to. You used to. She used to, he used to, it used to, they used to. So it is used with all the subjects. Whether the subject is singular or plural, doesn't matter. Used to is misused a lot by Nigerians who attempt to speak English. They use it in the sense of a simple present tense. They use used to talk about something they usually do. No, it's not correct. But we use used to talk about something we usually did. See the difference? Something we usually do, present simple. Something we normally or usually did, past simple. Used to is only used correctly when it is used to talk about something someone has stopped doing. When someone says, I used to, he used to, she used to, the speaker is talking about an action someone normally took in the past. An action someone was normally or usually taken in the past, but which has come to an end. Let us take an example. says 5 years ago, a liter of fuel used to sell for 100 naira. That means that this happened 5 years ago, but it has stopped. It doesn't happen anymore. So this sentence 4 says, we used to visit our granny when we were kids. We used to visit our granny when we were kids. That means that we are no longer kids. So we no longer visit our granny. It was something we were doing while we were kids. Then I'd like you not to forget that this verb is written used to, but not used to. It is not used to, it is used to. I bet you have questions. Good. If you have a question, drop your question in the comment section, and also give me your impression of our lessons. Are there areas of English language where you are having deficiencies and which you want me to turn my searchlight on? Are there better ways you think I can deliver this lecture so that you can better understand me? I need such feedback from you. You can join our Alfonso de Rothschild Tutorials community by adding yourself on WhatsApp using the number 091 330 1790. Alternatively, you can send me an email on the address alfonsoderothschild@gmail.com. I need to hear you through one of these mediums so that I get to understand the impact that the effort we are making here has on you. Remember to like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. If you do so, I'll give you a complete set of 100 past questions that will help you with your WAEC and JAM examinations. Until we meet on our next video, I say take care of yourself and please take your English language seriously, because it is your certificate to success outside the world. Without your ability to communicate, you can hardly transact business effectively with people. I hope you take it as seriously as I have taken it myself. Take care, be safe, and see you on my next video.